You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies. Hello and welcome to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast on Rocky Mountain Rooftop, proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Evan Lang, and with me, as always, my partner in crime, Skyler Timmons.
We're no longer on a river, Evan.
We were on the side of a river, but now we are Zen.
Yes, we're casting with the
means.
Zen.
So unfortunately, we have had to switch recording platforms again. So if there's any sort of growing pains or any weirdness, that may be why. But hey, we're trying out new things and we're going to see if we stick the landing. In worst case scenario, we will end up somewhere else in terms of what we're using to record. So, what are you going to do?
Nothing. That's what. You're going to listen to us. You're going to sit down and listen.
Yeah. All five of you are just going to have to deal with it.
Hey, we have at least 4 times as many as that.
Yeah. But we'll start things off as we've now made kind of a custom over the last couple weeks. We'll do a little bit of quick Denver sports talk, rapid fire. First things first, we'll talk about the Colorado Avalanche, who have now lost 4 straight.
Win a game in regulation, please.
They have been incredibly lucky to walk away with a point in 3 of their last 4 games. Overtime losses, either in overtime or via a shootout to the Mammoth, the Whalers, and now the Jersey Devils, and their first regulation loss to the Boston Bruins yesterday. And Skyler, once again, the big thing that stands out, this power play is just not working.
Yeah, I haven't been able to watch the games as much as of late. My methods aren't working at the moment, but I still get all the alerts. And yeah, part of it too, Evan, I think it's just like a breakdown of we need Mackenzie Blackwood back. I think Wedgwood, he's done great, but now I think you can see cracks starting to show of just being in there every day. They had to throw in Trent Miner in there. He did good in a game, but then you can see him get exposed a little bit. So we'll see. But yeah, there's offense is still rolling around. Defense is kind of getting cracked up a little bit, but it'll be fine.
Honestly, there's some cracks in the armor starting to show on the even strength offense, especially on the second line. Brock Nelson finally got his second goal, but really what it's been is sloppy puck handling, bad turnovers, bad transitions, and just kind of getting caught unaware. It's been pretty rough.
Yeah. But they'll figure some things out. They got to iron things out, and they're just having some bad luck. They're falling behind, and then they're having great comebacks. Now you just got to put it all together and get that good luck momentum rolling. The good thing is, just the one loss in regulation, which, the fact that they've been able to come back, be comeback kids, but still some things to iron out for them.
Yeah, and the fact that they haven't really lost any ground in the division so far, they are still tied for first place currently with Utah at 14 points apiece, is, a nice consolation prize. But I'd really like to see the Avs start putting things together, and especially like you said, I think we need Mackenzie Blackwood back because Wedge has been excellent, but he looks pretty gassed. And Trent Miner, he's not really an NHL caliber goalie. He's done admirably in terms of having to fill in where needed, but he's just not the guy.
Yeah. But the Avalanche, they'll be good.
Yeah. And same thing for our Denver Nuggets, who have now played 2 games. Unfortunately, lost a heartbreaker after a career performance by Aaron Gordon. 50 points. He had 11 successful shots from 3 and looked overall incredible, but the Nuggets fell in the season opener to the Golden State Warriors. But then they came back and just laid a really evenly laid out beatdown against the Phoenix Suns, where everybody played a role. Everybody's looked pretty good so far. And what's really been big is the bench. It's been what it needed to be so far, which is able to contribute. And especially with Jonas Valanciunas, actually having a backup big man that can score points is pretty nice.
Yeah. Oh, what was it on when they were playing the Suns? It was like the Nuggets were in pretty good position, and that was before Jokic had even scored a point in the game. And hey, that's a good sign. He's still putting up a triple double. But hey, if you know, Jokic is settling for a 20-point night while still doing the triple double, but then other guys are also getting 15, 16 points around him. Like, you'll take that. I'm sure Jokic is happy about that. He doesn't care about going out there trying to throw up a 50. Like, I'm sure he loves having teammates that he can turn to and can back him up and get him a little more rest throughout the year.
Yeah, it's got to be much less of a balancing act for him this year, where he doesn't need to be going out and scoring all the points. It can be, sometimes Jokic is just out there to facilitate other people scoring points. And he had,
Yeah.
16 assists last night? That'll play just fine.
Yeah. He's throwing a
Also,
triple double.
how nice is it to have Bruce Brown back and just fitting in like he never left?
Yeah. It's just good to have the game back together. And like you said, just good to have a backup bench, some depth, which is what the
Yeah.
Nuggets needed. Some experienced depth who can relieve some of the load on, Jamal Murray then doesn't have to try as hard. No, you add in Cam Johnson, he can fit into that mix perfectly.
Yeah.
So
And,
it's nice to,
Cam Johnson off to a little bit of a slow start, but he's on a new team and he's done fine. We know he can do better, but it's just going to be a wait and see kind of thing.
it's finding out how he fits into the just the scheme of the team. I think we saw that with plenty of guys when they come over. Like, okay, how do I fit into this? It was like Russell Westbrook last year. No, weren't quite sure how he fit in, but then he kind of just started to fill into the role that he needed to, and the team, he had a lot of success with the team there.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, just real quick before we move on, our Denver Broncos, after a stupid, miraculous win against the Giants last week, in which they scored 33 points in the fourth quarter, are somehow 5-2. It feels an incredibly fraudulent 5-2. Are at time of recording currently engaged in battle with the Dallas Cowboys, who are 3-3-1. Currently, they are up 7-3 after an R.J. Harvey 40-yard rushing touchdown.
I watched that first touchdown that the Giants put up in the fourth quarter, and I was like, this one's over for the Broncos. And I took a nap. Evan, I fell asleep on my bed taking a nap. I woke up and then saw the alert. Oh, Broncos win 33-32 with a miraculous comeback. And I thought, gosh dang it. I could have watched that.
I was very similar. We recorded our podcast last week. I got a pretty bad migraine, so I shut myself down for a little bit. Looked at the Broncos score before I went to take a nap, and so went, yeah, I'm not missing anything here. This is over. Only to wake up and go, wait, what?
Gosh dang it. It's funny how that works. That happens a lot too when I'm like watching the Avalanche. Like, oh, they're down 4-0 in the top of the like the start of the second period. I can stop watching, and then I getting alerts on my phone. Val Nichushkin scores. Nathan McKinnon. All of a sudden, it's tied up and it's going to overtime.
Yeah, that's how I felt on that the Nordiques Whalers game the other day.
That same way.
Gorgeous matchup, by the way, jersey wise.
Also, Broncos retro jersey throwbacks today too.
Some darn good looking sports teams here in the state of Colorado, but a team that has not been very good looking over the last 7 seasons has been your Colorado Rockies, and that is who we are here to talk about today. And Skyler, as of right now, we are still in the midst of waiting for the Rockies to make their final decision on who will be the head of baseball operations for the organization moving forward. And the Rockies have been very, very quiet, very secretive when it comes to this. Almost everything that we have learned about this comes from league, quote unquote, league sources or leaked information about the hunt. One of the first things of which we discussed last week, the idea that the Rockies are going to look for a chief revenue and strategy officer, and then more recently that the Rockies don't necessarily intend to hire both a president
Yeah.
of baseball operations, and a general manager. And both times we have learned about any candidates for the position have been leaks via Brittany Ghiroli of The Athletic. And we had another one of those throughout this week, and that is that the two known finalists for the position are Amiel Sawdaye of the Arizona Diamondbacks. He's the senior vice president and assistant general manager under Mike Hazen. And Matt Forman, who we discussed last week, the executive vice president and assistant general manager for the Cleveland Guardians. According to this same report, is that Toronto Blue Jays executive James Click and Kansas City Royals executive Scott Sharp are no longer in the running for the position. And Skyler, what do you make of this news?
It's interesting that we're just. I think the thing, probably the big one, because names are whatever. Usually, time for me of who's a candidate, who's a finalist. So we'll see that Matt Forman. Okay, he is moving on to the finalists. They like what he's done. Another Cleveland Guardians connection, whether it's trading players or I guess getting their executives. The Rockies just love the Cleveland Guardians for whatever reason. So cool to see him in there. Analytics, I think, is his big part of it. And then no, the Diamondbacks have been a team the Rockies have been chasing. They've been trying to compare themselves. It was coming into this year, and I think it was back in May. Bill Schmidt talking about, we always looked at the Diamondbacks, and that's the team that we're a few years behind them, and so the Rockies constantly compared themselves to the Diamondbacks. We're following in their footsteps, so it only stands to reason that they would go for one of their executives because of just that familiarity with the Diamondbacks. They've liked what they've done. The Rockies have tried to model themselves, at least in theory, behind or try to prescribe to the philosophy of the Diamondbacks, which was draft and develop. But then also, they've traded well, and they've free agent signings have been kind of hit or miss for the Diamondbacks for the most part. But the draft and develop aspect and competing and whatnot. So it's not surprising to see that these two guys are still finalists, in the running for it. And if there's anybody else, we don't know. Maybe we'll hear something, this week. Maybe we'll even get the news. But it's not really surprising that these are still the types of guys that the team is going after to help modernize this front office, especially from an analytical standpoint.
Yeah, and both of these candidates with very heavy backgrounds in scouting and analytics and player development, and both of them from, your small to mid-market teams that are not necessarily big spenders, focused on developing their own talent, focused on acquiring through trades more talent to develop. And for Sade especially is interesting because he's got such an intimate knowledge of the National League West. He's
Mm-hmm.
talked about, there's been some interviews with him where he's talking about what the Dodgers do successfully, and he's very well acquainted with how the Rockies do things, how the Diamondbacks do things. And for the Arizona Diamondbacks, the 2025 season for them was a disappointing one, especially after they were in the World Series in 2023, but they were in it for pretty much the entirety of the season.
Yeah, and they had a lot of bad injuries to their rotation that really hurt them. You lose Corbin Burns for a year, yeah, that's not great. And Eduardo Rodriguez, Jordan Montgomery, those guys were. Montgomery was out all year with the injury. Eduardo Rodriguez was injured, but also not that good. And everybody had a fallback with Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly. So no, you can't. But the offense itself for the Diamondbacks, they had a really good offense. It was their pitching, their starting pitching that was really bad, just bad luck, not good this year.
Yeah, and it wasn't even necessarily that they were just bad. It was, like you
Just
said,
not
it was the
elite.
injuries. It was bad luck. Team finished just 2 games below 500, 80 and 82 final record. And you look at their top performers. Two of them are guys that have been drafted and developed in house in Geraldo Perdomo, who honestly I think is going to get some MVP votes for the season
Yeah.
that he had. Spectacular defensive shortstop, really came into his own in terms of it being a hitter this year. And Corbin Carroll.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah, and
had just a good season.
and they had some good trades coming into the year with Josh Naylor, and was really good for them at first base, and then they traded him over to Seattle, and he continued to have a great year for Seattle, rest of the year for Seattle. And then they had Eugenio Suarez over at third base still. And the final year of his deal, he was having a good year. Then they traded him and got some good pieces back. So it was the fact that they realized, oh, we're out of contention. Let's trade off our valuable pieces to resupply, and you know who knows what they'll try and do this offseason. Be interesting to see. But the Diamondbacks are a good team to model themselves. They've had more success in their history than the Rockies have.
Yeah, they've got a World Series win.
Yeah.
And another thing that really stands out to me about the Diamondbacks is, when they traded guys away, the people that they had to fill in stood up to the challenge, especially. So
Yeah.
you trade Eugenio Suarez back to the Seattle Mariners, and who fills in is Blaze Alexander, who's been in the organization. He was drafted in 2018, but he comes up, he puts up a 1.7 wins above replacement in 74 games. Has a solid enough offensive season, but plays pretty strong defense at third base. And that's really all you can ask for in that kind of thing.
Yeah. And no, and the guys that they acquired in those trades, I think like Tyler Locklear over at first base now, they trade away Naylor. We immediately get a decent prospect back who can plug in immediately. And, they'll probably still ease him in, and maybe they'll look for another first base addition this offseason or figure out how to fit Locklear in, what the plans are with Peyton Smith and everything. They have options now, but now they have options. They can look at the free agent market. Okay, who could we bring in? Hey, Pete Alonso. We want to throw a bunch of money at you. You want to come play first base for the Diamondbacks? They have options too. I think that's the nice thing with the Diamondbacks is that they managed to construct themselves where they have options in-house they can use, but they're not afraid to go out and look. Okay, where could we improve? Last year it was like coming in this year, they went and got Naylor. Did they need to go get him? No, you had Pavin Smith. You had options you could have used there. But instead, they go get Naylor. He does his thing for however long, and it works out well. Trade him, and they get pieces now that they could still stick at first base, or they could go out and look for other options.
Yeah. And then you look at their rotation, and they still had a couple guys they were able to squeeze pretty good seasons out of, and Ryan Nelson and Merrill Kelly. Shelby Miller, coming out of their bullpen, had a really good season. Just, overall, they had some pitching woes that need to be addressed, but it's not something that they've historically struggled with.
Yeah. So the Diamondbacks have been very meticulous, and they're in a good position. And so, Mike Hazen has done a lot of good stuff. Okay, who's the guy that's been working underneath him? In this guy, okay, that's not a bad way to go. But Evan, I want to ask you this question right back. We talk about them. Does it matter to you if they're when they say they're not going to hire, necessarily hire both a PBO or a GM, that it might be just one or the other? And we've also heard depending on who they hire, depends on what title they're going to give this person. Does that matter to you at all, or is it just I just care about who the person is getting put in?
Honestly, right now, I just care about who the person is getting put in. It's not. This is not a terribly unknown thing. There are other
Yeah.
teams across the league where some have the GM, some have the PBO, some have both.
And some have the GM that has both titles on him.
Exactly. And for the Rockies right now, I think the focus should be, rather than what title you're going to give them, it's making sure you're hiring the right person for the job. And
Yeah.
maybe then just have an openness to, if you hire someone as the PBO and that's their title, maybe have the openness to let them hire a general manager or assistant GMs or whatever
Yeah.
on their own to start filling out their front office staff.
Yeah. You could announce one of these guys, say they get side A, they hire him, like, okay, you're just going to be the GM. But then as the year goes and they get closer to the end of the year, maybe things go well. You start to implement his things. Like, okay, you did well this year, maybe kind of a trial run. Okay, we're going to move you up. You're now the president of baseball ops. Now get yourself a GM to help work with you and run this whole thing. Because I could see
Exactly.
that maybe as a trial run type of thing,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Because a big thing is that, one, we have no idea if there's going to be baseball played in 2027. And two, and most importantly, this is the ground floor of a
Yeah.
rebuild. We're going to see some massive changes this offseason, but it's not going to stop this offseason. There are going to be more changes
Mm.
coming throughout the next few years for the Rockies. And that may be title changes or hiring more people or a variety of other things. That's just going to be how it is going forward.
I think a way to look at it maybe is like, okay, you can consider maybe Walker Monfort is president of baseball ops. No, in quotations, that will kind of be his role in this, chief revenue officer. That they'll kind of fill that role of a president of baseball ops with this GM working with roster construction, helping implement the process throughout the system. And then, after this year, then Walker can kind of take a step back. Okay, we've got people in place. We've got a situation. Now I can step out and focus on the duties that I was going to do as, when he got promoted, do whatever Greg Fiesel was doing. I'm going to focus on that now, and we'll let everybody kind of roll up. That may be a good way to think about it coming in this year, at least. That would make sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for whoever ends up being this next person, they already are going to have a lot to do here for the rest of this offseason.
They're going to hit the ground running.
And we'll talk about that after our first little break here. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Affected by Altitude. I'm Evan. That's Skyler. We're talking Rockies baseball. And in our first segment, we introduced, the newest known candidate for the Rockies head baseball operations job, Amiel Sawdaye. We talked about who his direct competitor appears to be in Matt Forman last week. Both guys with heavy scouting, analytics, and player development backgrounds with small to mid-market organizations. But honestly, Skyler, whoever the Rockies hire has a lot of work to do in not a huge amount of time. There is a long to-do list.
Yeah, because World Series is underway. We're already 2 games in. Series is tied 1-1, so we're at least going 5? Yeah, we're at least going 5 games. So yeah, but it's coming up quick. We got about roughly a week before the start of free agency and everything, and so there's some decisions coming up on the horizon. It's right around the corner that you have to start doing of figuring out the roster and the personnel of who's going to be on the team for next year.
Yeah, and I'll be diving into this over on Purple Row and my Monday Rock pile if you haven't already read it at this point. But honestly, the start of it is going to be, first of all, once we know what title this person is going to have, then it all comes down to the first big step is building the front office around them. And we've only really had one high profile departure so far in assistant general manager Zach Rosenthal, but I am expecting a decent number of other people to leave or be reassigned. I am expecting changes because the front office, it's going to be assistant GMs, it's going to be other executive staff, it's going to be scouting, it's going to be player development. We've actually already seen the Rockies reportedly, they haven't made it official yet, hire a pretty high profile level scout to be their Dominican Republic coordinator Alvin Duran, who previously of the San Diego Padres. That's a pretty big name. And we're going to, I think, continue to see shakeups and changes. I would expect a lot of names currently on that front office list to change as soon as a new head of baseball operations comes in.
Yeah, because the international stuff is right on the ground floor for the Rockies. So getting some good guys in place for that is crucial. And hopefully, Evan, maybe that's a step forward to then, hey, we're gonna expand beyond just Latin America. We're actually gonna try and put a bid in with the stars coming over from Japan.
Yeah, I mean, we already know that there are going to be multiple guys posting up from Japan this year, and pretty much every other season it's been, oh, we know the Rockies aren't going to do anything, but one can hope that fresh blood in the organization may change that up.
Yeah, because we know it's going to be the Dodgers or on a quest to build Team Japan first, I guess, and then and then Seattle's usually in the mix, and the Arizona Diamondbacks
and
or
Toronto.
Toronto. I meant to say the Los Angeles Angels, not the Diamondbacks. Diamondbacks.
Yeah, Toronto's been in the mix for pretty much all the big name players, but they just haven't been able to seal the deal, as it were. But it's really going to be allowing whoever you hire to build their front office around them. I don't want to see a ton of holdovers in the same roles. You want to see that this new guy is being given the autonomy to build his own staff with his own people. And sure, let him interview and see who he wants to keep of the current crop. If he wants to keep, Chris Forbes and Danny Montgomery and everybody else, totally fine. But it should be his decision to make, not, Dicker Walker Monfort saying, you have to keep these guys on your staff.
Unless it's Todd Hilton, Clint Hurdle, and Vinny Castilla.
Yeah. And
You have to keep them.
I don't see a lot of those, those are guys who don't have a ton of like actual duties in the organization. They're your, special assistants to the general manager.
People would riot. It comes out and being like, "Yeah, I fired Todd Hilton, Vinny Castilla, and Charlie Blackmon. We don't need them in this organization."
Hey, Vinny survived the transition. Vinny survived multiple transitions.
Yeah, but it's all been in house though.
That is true. But I can see that is one thing
yeah.
I can see, Dick and Walker going, no, you keep these guys. These are the franchise icons and we want to keep them happy. And you know what? Fine. But for like your scouting staff, your international staff, all that other stuff, all cards have to be on the table for, I'm sorry, such and such. I'm sorry, Rolando, you've got to go.
Mm-hmm.
I've got another guy that I have in mind for this position. And that's what I want to hear is I want to hear the new head of baseball operations going, here is my staff. And if part of that is retained staff and you go, I interviewed this guy, and the existing guy, and I decided the existing guy was the best possible person for the job, great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that kind of goes into kind of to piggyback off that, going into trying to find a manager. I think that'll be the first thing too. As soon as new guy is selected or announced, that the quest for a manager begins, because you need a guy at the helm. And hopefully some of those interviews have already taken place. Maybe the guy's already been selected and we just haven't heard it. And interviews have been taking place. That maybe Walker's done that. I don't know. But along with the rest of that front office, you got to make sure that we know who the manager will be.
Yeah, honestly. And it's not just going to be the manager. It's going to be an entire evaluation of every coaching staff from the big league level all the way down to even Dominican Summer League. Every level you need to reevaluate. There should be maybe one or two people in various positions. Like I would say, Bobby Meacham, the manager of the Hartford Yard Goats, who have had now two back-to-back really successful seasons. Yeah, he and his coaching staff probably safe. But, for teams where you've had some pretty unbalanced results, especially maybe Albuquerque or
That's more on
Fresno.
the level of talent in Albuquerque.
That is true. But
Pedro
still,
Lopez has done pretty good there.
But it's still something to evaluate. And I'm not saying that everybody on every level should all be fired, but I'm saying that you evaluate every person on every level to see who is the best fit, who's maybe not such a good fit, who can we shuffle around. But honestly, most importantly, it's going to come at the big league level. And we loved Warren Schaefer this season. I think he did a great job with the cards he was dealt. But you've got to look at and really think about, is Schaefer the guy that you want with you on the ground floor of this rebuild?
Yeah. And hopefully he does get that chance. He deserves it as the current incumbent. But yeah, it's getting it figured out on the ground floor. Who's going to lead the troops into battle? Is it Warren Schaefer to keep it going because he's familiar with everybody? Or are we going to go with somebody a little more experienced? There's so many avenues they can go with it.
Yeah, and a lot of manager positions opened up this year, so it's going to be a competitive market if you're looking for experienced guys.
How many people have interviewed Albert Pujols?
Yeah, another person who I've had some discussions about is Rocco Baldelli. who kind of a similar vibe in terms of guys like Warren Schaefer. But I also think that Warren Schaefer does deserve a chance as well. But my big
Mm-hmm.
thing for Schaefer would be then to let him build his own coaching staff in conjunction with the new head of baseball operations, because he didn't
Yeah.
really get to do that. Coming in as the interim and a bunch of other interim peoples and a bunch of holdovers from Bud Black's staff and previous coaching staffs. You know, normally a manager gets to build his own staff.
Yeah, and I could see that Warren did have a little bit of influence on that because he's the one who initially brought in Jordan Pacheco and Albuquerque. And then I'm sure he was also advocating like, okay, yeah, if we're going to get rid of Bam Bam, well, Pacheco deserves his shot. I've worked well with him. So you could see inklings and maybe Warren Schaefer had a little bit of influence but it was probably more so the front office with some input from Schaefer. Yeah, give whoever it is, give them the autonomy of, okay, I want these guys. Of course, you need the whoever's in charge of the front office. Okay, we need a guy in here who's also going to follow along with our plan. We don't need another guy who's doing something else with the pitching staff when we have a plan in place for this, and it's all conflicting and whatnot. But autonomy, I think that's what it goes back to. Is just
Yeah.
good guys
Autonomy
together.
and consistency. You want everybody on the same page through every level of player development.
Oh well, you need everybody pulling on the same rope in the same direction, and we're going to get some good players. Bill Schmidt making an appearance.
I feel bad because I don't think Bill Schmidt's a bad person, but he will not be missed in terms of the energy and honestly the ability that he brought to this organization. Just he was given, I think, more than a fair shake. He had basically 4 full seasons of being the general manager, and it went very poorly.
Mm-hmm. But remember, Evan, the right answer was just down the hallway.
No, no, it was not.
But to kind of also give people a timeline here, Evan, I think they'll be good for like the off-season things and like when decisions start coming up. So immediately, day after the World Series ends, free agency players eligible for free agency become free agents. So that's Herman Marquez. Um, I always forget the timeline of when options need to be decided, but it's kind of within that frame before free agency officially starts on just 5 days after the World Series ends. So the day after begins that timeline to extend qualifying offers. A lot of the time, you'll see options kind of being decided as well during that frame. Maybe new deals. You have that exclusive uh, negotiations with those players that are going to be free agents. So, like for the Rockies, you have 5 days where you can talk to Herman Marquez and see if you want to try and negotiate something exclusively before he hits the open market. So that's kind of the immediate thing, Evan. I think those are the first decisions for the new GM
Yeah,
of what's going on with, do we even try to do anything with Herman Marquez? And then deciding on options for guys like Kyle Farmer and Tyro Estrada.
yeah. And then after that, you've got I don't think the Rockies are going to extend any qualifying offers to anybody. You,
You hope
you're
they don't.
you're not going to offer $22 million to Herman because guess what? He's going to take it.
Mm-hmm.
But then right after that comes the non-tender deadline, and you've got Rule 5 protections as well. That's going to be very important because I think a really big part of what's going to happen with a new head of baseball operations is a pretty hefty reevaluation of our farm system. As we've
Yeah.
discussed at length this season, this farm system is not where we thought it was at in terms of depth, in terms of development, in terms of quality. And there are going to be decisions to be made on who you want to keep and continue developing and think that might have a future with the organization and who doesn't.
Yeah. No, and you have until November 21st, really. The 18th is when the 40-man roster stuff has to be set for the Rule 5. And then the 21st is the tender deadline. And so that's going to be a lot of those arbitration guys of who's going to be what. We've got the surprise last year where it was Cal Quantrill and then Brendan Rodgers were non-tendered. They also had immediately signed Kyle Farmer the same day they non-tendered Brendan Rodgers. But so it's roughly a little less than a month of all these are like the biggest decisions made, because he also has the GM meetings November 10th through the 13th, and then there's an owners meeting 18th through the 20th. Stuff's always happening between those. Deals could be made, trades and discussions and all that. So it's a busy like 20 days, a little under 30 days for whoever gets hired, depending on when he gets hired.
Yeah, we're not
It,
kidding when we say that they've got to hit the ground running. The
yeah,
Rockies have allegedly, again, they've been pretty quiet about all of this. All we know is what has been reported on is allegedly the Rockies are aiming to have their decision made and a hire announced by the end of the World Series, or at the very least before the GM meetings start.
yeah,
That's in basically a week and a half.
at the soonest.
And then, like we said, this person immediately needs to hit the ground running in terms of hiring up staff, doing all the other evaluations, talking to other teams, basically getting the ball rolling, getting their feet wet, and there's going to be a lot of heavy lifting to be done.
Yeah, because you have until no, and then December 8th will be the winter meetings through the 11th, and then after that, there'll be the draft lottery. Rockies again can't draft higher than 10th in the first round, but they will have the first pick in every subsequent round, the second on, and then the Rule 5 draft December 10th, and that kind of carries out the year of like the big events. But yeah, you got to hit that ground run that first 30 days. It's going to be a marathon
Yeah, and
for
it'll
that comes
sneak
in.
up on you how fast it's going to be. Oh, pitchers and catchers report. Oh,
Uh-huh.
spring training starts. Oh, it's opening day.
And what I think too, what the Rockies have talked about is, okay, if we need to, like, in the meantime, have a group of decision makers to make the decisions. So like one of the assistant GMs, or it's Walker working with whoever in that front office that's left. No, because some of these decisions are pretty easy. You can decline the options on Estrada and Farmer. They're great, but they're not worth the money. So you can do the buyouts on them. And then, then the tender deadline, that one will take a little bit more in depth to figure out, but that's not until after those GM meetings. And if they want to have a guy in place by then, okay. So like at the very, like the most immediate decisions are pretty easy that anybody could make. Dick Monfort could make them. Pretty easy. Estrada, we're going to decline your option, and then he's still arbitration eligible. He could say, no, I want to be a free agent. They could just outright release him then. But so some pretty easy immediate ones, but you definitely want somebody in sooner than rather than later.
Yeah, and honestly, for a lot of stuff, it's going to be just thinking about where the money's going to go, because
Yeah.
we know that there's not going to be a ton of cash moving around next year. We're all expecting reduced payroll as the Rockies, rebuild and try and figure things out. I think the guy potentially do the most money in terms of arbitration is Mickey Moniak, who's like 4 point something million as a projection.
Yeah.
But, we really have no idea how things are going to look like, other than the fact that payroll is going to be relatively small. And once again, a chunk of that payroll is going to be taken up by our dear, dear friend, Chris Bryant.
Mm-hmm. He won't return our phone calls anymore.
Thank goodness. I mean, what?
Yeah. So you get tied up. So you're going to have to get a little creative and figure out things to do. One other thing, Evan, that I was thinking of that I would love, we kind of pitch this idea of like a wish list thing. What would you want to see the new GM do the most just in this offseason, or really what do you hope he does
Bring back
or they do
vests.
pertaining to the roster itself?
uh Make all new players brought back to the roster model their new black vest jerseys. No, honestly, the biggest thing that I want to see from a new GM is, and it seems counterproductive, but I want to see him trade away some prospects. I
Uh-huh.
want him to actually take a good hard look at our farm system and make some decisions, because it's something that honestly this team has not done a good job at doing over the last 7 losing seasons. is saying, all right, this guy is great and we love him, but I just don't see where he fits. So why don't we get something that does fit in our plan back by sending him to a different organization? No more of that stupid Rockies fear of we can't let go of any of our prospects because if they do good with another team, it makes us look silly. Because you know what?
Uh-huh.
We've already looked quite silly. You can't look any worse.
Yeah. No, if you're going to have the fear of what a player is going to do somewhere else instead of focusing on what a player you bring back could do for you, like your just outlook is wrong and everything. Not a good way to run a team.
Yeah. And if
Uh,
that means, Zach Veen or Sterling Thompson or Drew Romo, Benny Montgomery, guys that we all like a great deal. But if that means that we see them leave in terms of assets that the Rockies are going to use, great.
yeah. Yeah.
Because sometimes that's also for the best for the other guys of
Mm-hmm.
what if they get a big league shot somewhere else and can actually do something instead of just languishing as part of our farm system.
Yeah. So it was Isaac Collins with the Brewers.
Fabulous. Mike Talkman.
Yeah. Well, he's done his career and stuff.
Yeah, he's ended up having he's never going to be a Hall of Famer or anything, but he's turned into just a pretty solid Major League Baseball player.
A Hall of pretty good player. Uh, something too I was thinking of, I know we're running short here, but I would love just whoever it is to, like at the gym, just goes up to Brian Jones in the analytics department and just hands him a blank check or just, here, fill this out. Merry Christmas. What do you want? What do you need for this system?
You
And
hire as many people as you want.
as you
You
can.
you log on to whatever the Steam equivalent of analytics software is. Go nuts. Here's a gift card.
Yeah, like I just hope that it just turns into like Christmas morning, to for Brian Jones. Go down and say, "Hey, here you go," and just go nuts. It's on us.
Or dare I say, there may be someone else in charge of research and analytics other than Brian Jones.
Yeah, I don't know, but whoever it is, just to go down like, okay, what do you need? Because I think we've heard like Brian Jones like knows what he's doing, just doesn't have the resources,
Yeah,
type of thing. And so I would love whether it's him or they replace him, whatever, that they just get a blank check. Say, okay, here you go. What do you need? Go
absolutely.
get it.
Absolutely.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal. That would be huge because I'm sick of hearing, oh, the Rockies have the smallest in all the league. Okay, let's change that.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Although, who knows, because they do have an owner who wants to go into the negotiations and try and get a cap on all spending. Not just roster payroll, but all spending in an organization.
Well,
Remember
Jack,
that news? That
we
news?
were having a fun conversation, Skyler, until you had to bring that up.
You remember that news? That news nugget?
Yes, I unfortunately remember that news nugget.
Man, that lockout's going to be awful.
Yeah, it's going to be rough. But we're going to take one more quick break here, and we would come back, just have a little bit more to discuss in terms of changes in our Colorado Rockies organization. So don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Affected by Altitude with Evan and Skyler, our third and final segment here. And Skyler, I think the big thing to discuss here is some news that broke earlier in the week, news that did not come necessarily from the Rockies organization. Again, they have said very, very little. I don't think they
Remake
ever.
of Halo 1, baby.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, coming to PS5.
Yeah, that news didn't come from the Rockies organization.
It sure didn't. And news that also didn't come from the Rockies organization is that the team and pitching coach Darryl Scott are parting ways.
He will not be coming back as the pitching coach.
And he
Which
will not be missed as the pitching coach.
this is for all the folks out there. This is my impression of mild shock.
Yeah, it's
For the video, or for the audio, or for the visual viewers, it paid off.
Yeah, this news came out on October 22nd. So that was what, last Wednesday. Um, it was reported on by Thomas Harding, who per source said, and honestly, this is a change that I am shocked didn't happen sooner. You know, Darryl Scott is a perfectly lovely human, but the performance of the Rockies pitchers under his stewardship since he became the bullpen coach has been frankly unacceptable.
Yeah.
And it never really made sense how he ended up the pitching coach to begin with, because he was the bullpen coach for 2 years. And in those 2 years, the Rockies bullpen was one of the worst units in baseball.
Yeah. And in franchise history. Yeah. What a fun trivia question to ask people when they look back at the 2025 season. What was the only like main coach carryover to stick with the coaching staff throughout the rest of the year as they lost 119 games? Spud Black was fired, and Mike Redmond was fired. Bam Bam Mullins was fired, and they replaced them all. Who's the one that stuck around? Well, it was it was it was Darryl Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dustin Garneau in the bullpen, but he was a brand new hire anyway coming into the year. Ron Gideon's just always been there. Like I don't really count those, but like the main hands-on coaches of like the main coaches, everybody was fired except for Darryl Scott with the position that had one of the absolute worst in baseball history.
Yeah. Ron Gideon was here before we got here, and he will be here long after we are gone. Ron Gideon is eternal.
We just showed up one day and he was here.
And we were like, hey, man, what are you doing? He's like, I'm your first base coach. We went, okay.
I'm going to work with your outfielders. Oh, okay.
All right. Yeah. But nah, for Darryl Scott, especially in terms of results, you know, ending his tenure this year, one of the worst pitching staffs of all time. The in terms of the starting rotation, but just overall the Rockies pitching staff, it was already pretty odd that he got the pitching coach position when Steve Foster decided to step down. Steve Foster, at the end of the 2019 season, stepped down, moved into a director of pitching strategies role. He left in the offseason before the 2025 season. And it always stuck to me that hiring Darryl Scott was just one of those, the Rockies love their internal continuity moves, because nobody in their right mind would have hired a bullpen coach who had just run out one of the worst bullpens in the league 2 years running and put them in charge of the entire pitching staff.
Yeah, he was named bullpen coach in 2019. Then he became the regular pitching coach in 2021. So starting in the 2022 season, he was the pitching coach, main pitching coach.
Yeah.
But yeah, because it was in 2020, 2021, he had done nothing to inspire confidence of working with the pitching staff. Steve Foster steps down, and then he gets promoted starting in 2022, and you're like, what? Why would we do that?
Yeah.
And it just got worse from there, because you look at 2022 to 2025, that starting pitching was awful.
Yeah. So
it was bad.
During that stretch, during that the 2022, 3, 4, 5, during the 4 years that Darryl Scott has been the pitching coach, the Rockies have regularly had the worst, or one of the worst team ERAs in baseball. Over that 4 years, they had the third worst adjusted ERA. They were dead last in strikeout rates and had the worst team ERA in each of those 4 seasons.
Yeah.
And in all of those seasons, they had a team ERA of 5.4 or higher.
Yeah, and it's not all on him, of course. That's never all on the coach, because you look at the Rockies' personnel on the field during those years. Yeah, not great. When Austin Gomber's one of your better pitchers, you got a problem during that stretch. And it's not all on him, but he also wasn't helping improve things.
Yeah. While you can't put it all on him, at the same time, you can look at his tenure and go, something clearly wasn't working here.
Because how many times did we have the joke of he would go out for a meeting with the pitcher, a key at bat, a big crucial situation, goes up to offer words of support or scouting or whatever, and then immediately something bad happens in that at bat.
Yeah.
A home run, a huge hit, double clears the bases, and the Rockies are in a hole, and it blows the inning wide open. Like, it seemed to happen all the time. And you wonder, like, what was he saying when he went up there?
Almost comically so.
Yeah, where you almost come to expect it.
Yeah, for this is it. I don't understand why he was still here, and that sounds really mean, but of all the coaches to get fired during the regular season, why Darryl Scott stuck out the entire rest of the season and you didn't, call up somebody from one of the minor league affiliates like you did, Jordan Pacheco and Nick Wilson. You could have made Flint Wallace, who's serving as the pitching coach out in the Arizona Fall League right now. You could have had him serve as an interim pitching coach. You could have done something.
You could
And
have had Aaron Cook was showing up throughout the year, and he wanted to keep doing more stuff. You can be like, "Hey, Cookie, like,
yeah,
do you want to just do this the rest of the year?
you want to do us a solid?
Yeah, and, like, get us through the year and help us out. Share what you can." And you know, but he said, "Why?" There were probably options they could have gone to. Why did they just settle back? Like, yeah, we
Because
can stick with
we know
Darryl
that
Scott.
of the Rockies are loyal to a fault, but through that loyalty, they have had guys willing to do them a favor.
Yeah,
Like Clint Hurdle very clearly was enjoying his retirement as a special assistant, where he gets to travel around, but most of the time he gets to hang out with his family and wear very loud Hawaiian shirts.
yeah,
And, he put that aside to do the team a favor and be their interim bench coach. And I know there's a lot of people saying, oh, they're probably just going to give it to Clint Hurdle. Clint Hurdle was very clearly happy not being a manager anymore.
yeah,
And he stepped in to do them a solid. And you could have done that with, like you mentioned, Aaron Cook. Aaron Cook was hanging around a decent chunk and it was awesome. And you could have just said, hey, Cookie, it doesn't need to be permanent. We just need you to get us through the rest of this season. And if you want to try and be a part of this thing moving forward, your name is one of the first we will evaluate. But if not, no worries.
yeah, yeah. It just kind of goes back to another aspect of, you look at Darryl Scott, who's been with the organization for a long time. He played with them, in the system in 1995 in the minors, and then bounced around. He came back and worked through the minor league system, in various capacities, and so he just kind of slowly moved up in the organization over the course of like 15 years,
Yeah.
15, 20 years, and then he's in the top pitching position on a coaching staff, and it just didn't work out. And it's tough. I'm sure being a pitching coach in Colorado is a tough, tough job. It's a tough job anywhere across the league. And I would just never hear much. Like, you'd never hear much from Darryl Scott about his thoughts or his philosophies. Was he given the full, no ability to do the things he wanted? No, we saw maybe some hints of maybe he was having a better impact after Bud Black was fired and he could start doing his own thing. Maybe, but whatever it is, he was just another symptom and a symbol of the past of the things that made this team not good.
Yeah.
No,
And
his pitching
honestly,
philosophy probably wasn't up to date.
a lot of the changes that happened, we saw some positive changes for the first like month or two after Bud
Yeah,
Black was fired, and then the rest of the season, the rotation especially really sank. Some of the worst performances we've seen from guys like Erman, from guys like Austin Gomber.
yeah. Because like Steve Foster, like he was doing some good stuff. It was a mix of good talent, and he was getting. It wasn't working for everybody, but maybe with Herman Marquez or something. Steve Foster had worked with Marquez. There was something that clicked there, but Darryl Scott just did not have that touch with anybody. anybody in that rotation, everybody that comes up, they'd fall into the same traps. It's just rote, cookie cutter, kind of performances by everybody and approaches by everybody.
Lots of walks, not getting strikeouts, lots of contact.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and it's a bummer because like we're not necessarily cheering for anybody to have lost their job,
I
but
was
at
cheering
the
for this
same,
one. I honestly was, like, my brother and I, because pitching, is so infuriating. Like with the hitting coach, it can give or take because hitters are stubborn, whether they listen to a coach or not,
looking at
type of thing.
you,
But
Mike.
yeah, but with pitching coaches, like pitching is they're so involved because it's constantly talking about things, helping like with mechanical things, and creating attack plans and evaluation that Darryl Scott was just not up to snuff. You could see the body of work and it was not promising.
Yeah,
And so to see that and then translate, okay, now you're over the entire pitching staff. You're like, I'm not confident in that. And we were proven right
yeah,
that we weren't confident in it. And so, yeah, he gets fired. And I usually don't want to do that, but you're like, thank goodness,
yeah.
because it just wasn't working for both
Well,
parties.
what I was going to say is like I don't necessarily cheer for somebody to lose their job, but this kind of thing, it was a long time coming, and it
Yeah.
was arguably someone who probably should not have been in that position to begin with.
Yeah. Cause it was constantly, every off season when they would announce coaching changes, there would be little to nothing, maybe changing an assistant coach here or there. And it's like, Darryl Scott's still the pitching coach? How? How?
Yeah, we shuffle through, a couple bullpen coaches, hitting coaches, assistants, everything like that. But the one thing that never changed was that Darryl Scott was the pitching coach.
Yeah. And so that would talk about our previous segment, talking about the GM wish list or things they need to do. That's the other big thing is when you're developing that coaching staff, part of it is the analytical part, but then a pitching coach who is not afraid and can help attack and adapt to Coors Field.
Yeah.
Now, is that going to be an experienced guy who's pitched at Coors Field? Not necessarily, but just somebody who can understand how to learn from the environment and adjust to it and attack it instead of trying to cope with it.
And maybe that guy is Flint Wallace, the guy that they've been potentially grooming for the position like they had with Nick Wilson. Maybe it's someone from outside the organization. We have no idea, but
Maybe it's me.
maybe it is. But it's
See,
just going to be
what you
one of
want to do
those
is throw
things where
fastballs at the knees, Evan.
knees. What about sinkers? As long
I
as you're
would teach.
inducing soft ground ball contact.
I would and throw strikes. I would make everybody knuckleballers.
That'd be fun. Get Brad Hopp in to teach everybody how to throw a terrifying knuckleball.
I'm going to get Jamie Moyer as my pitching coach, and you teach him the heater.
87 miles per hour.
We wish.
Burn your eyebrows off with that kind of speed. My last question for you,
We're hitting
Skyler.
75.
We've now talked about a bunch of different stuff. Is there anybody on the coaching staff right now, big league coaching staff, that you would say should absolutely be safe?
You've asked me this question before, several weeks ago.
And I'm asking it again now.
No, because you're going to be bringing in a new guy. So
Yeah, and I
no.
think that's the mindset that whoever is our new head of baseball operations is going to need to take.
Yeah,
Is
I hope Jordan Pacheco gets to go back down to Albuquerque and doesn't have to travel to Denver anymore.
Yeah, or something. Just you've got to do your due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be interesting to see in a week from now where the Rockies are at, because in about a week from now we will potentially have the World Series over or very close to over, and
Keep an eye on Wednesday.
The clock is ticking for the Rockies to have their decision made, and we're not necessarily rushing them, but the nature of the beast right now is there's a lot of work to do and not a lot of time.
Yeah, you could have had a leg up on this if you had done some things back in middle of July.
Mm-hmm. But all we can do is wait and see.
Pretty much. It's me. I'm the GM.
Can I have a job?
No.
We did this bit last week.
I'm trying to hire outside of the organization, Evan. You're
I am outside
deep.
of the organization.
No, you're in too deep.
Well, that's going to do it here.
You're on a first name basis with their communications guy.
Oh, he's so nice, though. We love Corey. Yeah, shout out to Corey Little, the new vice president of public relations with the Colorado Rockies.
There we go.
But that's going to do it here for us on another episode of Affected by Altitude. Thank you so much for sticking with us. Skyler, where can the folks find you at?
Find me over on Twitter at Skyler Timmons or on Blue Sky, stimmons13.psky.social. And then writing Wednesday Rock Piles over at purplerow.com. And Ranking the Rockies series still going strong. You will not find me writing over Fans First Sports Network. At the time, we're not writing anymore, so.
Yeah, hopefully that'll change. You can find me over on evanlang27.bsky.social over on Blue Sky. I would love to hear from you. You can also catch me writing the Monday Rock Piles and the weekly Pebble Reports, Arizona Fall League stuff over on purplerow.com. Remember that you can find Rocky Mountain Rooftop on all of your favorite podcasting platforms of choice, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. You can catch the video version of the show over on youtube.com. Remember that you can find Rocky Mountain Rooftop on all of your favorite social media websites, including the YouTube page at Rocky Mountain Rooftop. That's at ROCKYMTN Rooftop.
Also, it's Halloween this week, Evan, so happy Halloween, folks.
Happy Halloween, everybody. That's going to do it here for us. Skyler, how about you hit him with it and we'll get on out of here.
Fare thee well, blah.
My baseball team sucks.
I want a less sucky baseball team. Blah.
Count the number of ways that the team needs to get better.
Let us count the Rockies' losses. 1. No,
we're
2.
We're going to be here for way too long if we do that count.
That's when you do the motion blur, and then it cuts to me now finishing.
Many
119.
Alrighty. Thanks, everybody.
This has been Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast with Rocky Mountain Rooftop, a proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. Catch new episodes every Monday on wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Be sure to follow us on YouTube as well for video versions of the show.